Why did a judge have to throw out an entire Miami mayoral election after finding votes cast by dead people? And why is it still illegal today to sell oranges on the sidewalk while the richest neighborhood in America has 0 roads leading to it? Welcome to 71 Dumbest Things About Miami, where we're exposing the wildest historical facts, like the live nuclear missile site still sitting in the Everglades from the Cuban Missile Crisis, alongside the myths you still believe, like thinking Miami never gets snow when it actually has, once. We're proving which insane stories are verified history and which are just sunburned lies, so hit that subscribe button before we reveal the truth. 1. Miami's founder wasn't some cigar-chomping tycoon, it was a widow with a citrus grove. Julia Tuttle owned land along a swampy river and refused to let big railroad money ignore her. She mailed Henry Flagler fresh orange blossoms after a brutal freeze wiped out crops everywhere else, proving Miami never froze. Flagler took the bait, brought his railroad south, and just like that, Miami existed. No male founding father, no war, no gold rush. Just one stubborn woman with fruit and a mailing address, quietly building the only major American city ever started by a lady with a grudge. 2. During the Cold War, Miami wasn't just beaches and flamingos. It was basically spy headquarters. The CIA ran JMWAVE out of the University of Miami, and it became their biggest station outside Washington. Hundreds of agents plotted anti-Castro operations, trained exiles, and ran secret missions right under palm trees. Locals had no idea their sleepy college campus was secretly coordinating covert warfare against a foreign government. Boat launches, sabotage plans, spy recruitment all happening blocks from sunbathers. Miami basically lived a double life, tanning by day and running a shadow war by night decades before anyone found out. 3. Miami's murder rate in the early 80s got so out of control, cocaine wars turned the city into a real-life crime movie set. Bodies piled up faster than the county morgue could handle, so officials had to rent a refrigerated truck just to store the overflow. Drug cartels fought openly in broad daylight while tourists sunbathed nearby, completely unaware. Detectives called it the wildest period in American crime history. Miami wasn't just party central anymore. It was basically ground zero for a full-blown cocaine war. Nobody outside Florida wanted to admit was really happening. 4. Selling oranges on a Miami sidewalk sounds harmless, but technically, it could land you 30 days behind bars. Buried deep in old city code is a rule against unauthorized street vending, and yes, fruit counts. Nobody enforces it seriously today, but it's never been erased from the books. Imagine explaining to your cellmate you're doing time for citrus. It sounds like a joke tourists make until someone points out the actual law still exists. Miami loves bending rules everywhere else, yet somehow this one bizarre, outdated fruit statute survived every modern cleanup effort completely untouched. 5. Miami sits in a place so warm most residents have never even owned a winter coat, yet snow actually fell once. On January 19, 1977, flurries drifted down over the city, stunning everyone outside. Kids who had never seen snow ran outside screaming, while adults stood frozen staring at the sky in disbelief. Most of it melted before it even touched the ground, leaving barely a memory behind. Miami got one single moment of winter magic in its entire recorded history, and somehow still argues about whether it even really counted. 6. Long before South Beach became a playground for everyone, Virginia Key Beach existed because black residents were legally barred from most other shorelines. City officials created it as the designated colored-only beach, forcing an entire community to travel far just to enjoy the ocean. Families packed picnics and treated it like their own private paradise despite the injustice behind why it existed. It stayed segregated until the 1960s when laws finally changed. Today, it stands as a quiet reminder that Miami's postcard beaches carry a much heavier history than most visitors ever realize. 7. Everyone assumes Burger King started in Miami surrounded by neon and flamingos, but that's not even close to true. It actually began in Jacksonville under the awkward name Insta Burger King. A group of Miami businessmen later bought the struggling chain, rebranded it, and turned it into the fast food empire people recognize today. So the Whopper, as we know it, owes its entire identity to a Miami rebrand rather than a Miami birth. Even Miami's most iconic fast food legend turns out to be one giant corporate glow-up story. 8. Every football fan argues about the greatest team ever, but the 1972 Miami Dolphins settle it instantly. They finished an entire season without a single loss, then capped it off winning the Super Bowl. Over 50 years later, no other NFL team has matched that perfect record. Former players reportedly still celebrate every season some contender loses their first game, reminding everyone their record stands untouched. Miami didn't just win a championship, they created a permanent bragging right that has outlived coaches, players, and even several stadium renovations. 9. Most cities squeeze between highways or suburbs, but Miami sits proudly wedged between two entirely separate national parks. Everglades. National Park sprawls to the west, while Biscayne National Park stretches out to the east, practically touching the coastline. Nowhere else in America can someone leave a nightclub and be paddling through alligator territory within the hour. Miami somehow balances skyscrapers and swamp wilderness like it's completely normal. Locals barely blink at the contrast while visitors stand amazed, realizing their vacation city doubles as a gateway to two wild, untouched ecosystems. 10. Coral Gables looks like it was teleported straight from the Mediterranean, and that's exactly the point. Architect George Merrick designed the entire city from scratch starting in 1925, giving it matching pastel buildings, archways, and plazas. Nothing was left to chance, not even street names, which followed his personal vision completely. Buyers back then thought they were investing in paradise, and honestly, they kind of were. Coral Gables became one of America's first fully master-planned cities, proving Miami's obsession with dramatic aesthetics started almost a full century before Instagram ever existed. 11. Hidden deep in the Everglades sits a real Cold War relic most tourists never even notice. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the military quietly built an active nuclear missile site to defend Miami from a potential attack. Soldiers lived among mosquitoes and alligators instead of city comforts, guarding weapons capable of ending the standoff instantly. The base stayed operational for years before eventually being abandoned. Today, curious visitors can walk through the same bunkers where soldiers once waited nervously for orders that thankfully never came during humanity's closest brush with nuclear war. 12. Near Homestead stands a mysterious structure built entirely by one man working completely alone. Edward Leedskalnin single-handedly moved multi-ton coral blocks, stacking them into what became Coral Castle. Neighbors reported seeing him work only at night, claiming he used mysterious methods nobody could explain. No cranes, no crew, no modern machinery, just one determined immigrant and decades of secretive labor. Engineers today still can't fully agree on how he pulled it off. Miami ended up with a genuine unsolved mystery, hiding in plain sight surrounded by suburban homes and curious tourists snapping photos. 13. Al Capone once ruled Chicago's underworld with an iron fist, but he spent his final years quietly retired on Miami's Palm Island. Health problems from syphilis had worn him down, leaving the once feared gangster confused and weakened. Neighbors reportedly saw him fishing and relaxing like an ordinary retiree, rather than America's most notorious criminal. He died there in 1947, far from the violence that made him famous. Miami somehow became the peaceful final chapter for a man whose name once caused entire cities to tremble with fear. 14. Florida bars once turned an incredibly bizarre sport into genuine entertainment, featuring dwarf tossing contests that drew shockingly large crowds. Miami area clubs helped popularize the trend until it exploded into a statewide controversy. Advocacy groups condemned it as exploitative and dangerous, eventually pushing lawmakers to intervene. In 1989, Florida officially banned the practice, ending its brief, bizarre nightlife run. Patrons who once cheered for it now barely remember it happened at all. Miami somehow hosted one of America's strangest short-lived nightlife fads before quietly erasing it from public memory. 15. Most cities keep wildlife far from their financial districts, but Miami lets manatees casually cruise through downtown skyscrapers. These massive, gentle creatures glide right through the Miami River, surrounded by glass towers and rush-hour traffic. Office workers on lunch breaks often stop mid-conversation just to watch one float lazily beneath a bridge. Tourists find it hard to believe multi-ton sea cows share space with bankers and lawyers daily. Miami somehow blends Wall Street energy with wildlife documentary vibes, proving nature refuses to respect the city's obsession with concrete and skyline views. 16. Overtown once thrived as a vibrant black cultural hub, so lively it earned the nickname Harlem of the South. Musicians packed clubs while businesses flourished, creating a proud, self-sufficient community. Then, in the 1960s, planners drove Interstate 95 straight through its heart, demolishing homes and severing neighborhoods overnight. Families watched decades of culture and investment vanish under bulldozers within just a few years. Longtime residents still describe the loss as devastating and irreversible. Miami's shiny highway system that tourists barely think twice about literally paved over one of its most important black communities. 17. The Fontainebleau Hotel wasn't just another fancy Miami beach resort. It actually became a Hollywood star. Filmmakers chose its dramatic curved architecture and glamorous poolside energy as the perfect backdrop for James Bond's Goldfinger. Sean Connery strolled its halls, giving the hotel permanent movie legend status. Guests today still ask staff to point out exact spots where scenes were filmed decades ago. Few hotels anywhere can claim starring alongside a global spy icon. Miami's obsession with glitz and grandeur turned one beachfront hotel into an accidental piece of cinematic history forever. 18. Baseball fans expected the Miami Marlins to struggle given their notoriously empty stadium seats, yet somehow they've won 2 World Series titles. Both championships shocked rival fans who assumed a team with such low attendance couldn't possibly compete at that level. Players celebrated wildly, while local bars barely filled up compared to championship parades in other cities. Analysts still call it one of baseball's strangest success stories. Miami somehow proved you don't need packed stands to win it all. Just clutch pitching, timely hitting, and apparently a whole lot of empty seats nearby. 19. Fisher Island ranks among America's wealthiest zip codes, yet oddly enough there isn't a single bridge connecting it to the mainland. Residents and visitors must arrive exclusively by ferry, private boat, or helicopter, making it one of the most exclusive communities anywhere. Luxury car owners keep separate vehicles just for the island, since driving there directly is impossible. Privacy-obsessed millionaires apparently love the built-in isolation this creates. Miami's mainland traffic chaos stays completely irrelevant here. Fisher Island proves that sometimes ultimate luxury simply means being wealthy enough to avoid bridges altogether. 20. Most people assume Miami's name comes from Spanish or English roots, but its true origin traces back centuries earlier. It actually derives from Mayaimi, the name of indigenous people who once lived around Lake Okeechobee, long before European settlers arrived. Their language and culture shaped this land far before glamorous hotels or neon signs ever existed. Modern Miami rarely acknowledges this deep indigenous history buried beneath its flashy reputation. Few tourists snapping selfies on the beach realize the city's very name honors people who called this land home thousands of years before anyone else. 21. Miami played a central role in one of America's most infamous Cold War failures, the Bay of Pigs invasion. Cuban exiles who fled Castro's regime trained secretly and organized their entire operation right out of Miami neighborhoods. Locals whispered about mysterious warehouse meetings and late-night boat launches happening near their own backyards. When the invasion collapsed disastrously, survivors returned quietly carrying the weight of failure home to Miami. The city that seemed like paradise on postcards was secretly staging one of history's most disastrous military operations. Miami's sunny reputation hid a surprisingly serious geopolitical secret for decades. 22. Fashion icon Gianni Versace built a glamorous mansion right on Miami Beach, never expecting it would become the scene of his shocking murder. In 1997, he was gunned down on his own front steps, stunning the fashion world instantly. His killer fled, but died by suicide before ever facing trial, leaving unanswered questions that still circulate today. Fans left flowers outside the mansion for weeks, mourning a legend taken far too soon. Miami's glitzy fashion crowd suddenly confronted real tragedy proving even paradise couldn't protect its most celebrated residents from senseless violence. 23. O.J. Simpson faced a massive $33.5 million wrongful death judgment, yet somehow kept his Miami area home entirely protected. Florida's unusually generous homestead law shields primary residences from creditors, no matter how large the debt becomes. Legal experts nationwide expressed disbelief watching him live comfortably despite owing millions. Critics called it a glaring loophole benefiting wealthy debtors, while everyday people lose everything over smaller debts. Miami's real estate rules quietly became a national controversy overnight. Sometimes the most shocking legal stories aren't about crimes themselves, but about the strange protections wrapped around them afterward. 24. Long before trendy cafes and sailboat marinas took over Coconut Grove, was home to one of the largest Bahamian immigrant communities anywhere in America. These early settlers brought distinct architecture, food, and traditions that shaped the neighborhood's earliest identity completely. Wooden shotgun houses and vibrant church congregations reflected their deep cultural roots. Over time, development and gentrification pushed much of that history into the background. Few visitors today sipping expensive coffee realize they're standing on land shaped by Bahamian hands generations ago. Miami's trendiest neighborhood hides an origin story most tourists never hear about. 25. Miami Beach's beautiful Art Deco district almost got completely bulldozed for modern development until an unlikely savior appeared on television screens everywhere. The show Miami Vice showcased those pastel buildings so stylishly that preservationists suddenly had powerful public support. Investors who once wanted demolition started seeing dollar signs and restoration instead. Buildings once considered outdated became trendy backdrops overnight thanks entirely to a cop show soundtrack and neon lighting. Miami's most photographed neighborhood exists today, largely because of a television series proving sometimes pop culture accidentally becomes the most effective preservation tool imaginable. 26. University of Miami football almost disappeared entirely during brutal budget cuts throughout the 1970s, threatening to cancel the program completely. Administrators seriously debated shutting it down as financial pressures mounted year after year. Instead, the team clawed back support, eventually transforming into a dominant powerhouse. Players who once feared unemployment ended up celebrating 5 separate national championships over following decades. Rival programs watched in disbelief as a nearly canceled team became one of college football's most feared dynasties. Miami somehow turned near extinction into one of sports' greatest turnaround stories nationwide. 27. People assume Miami-Dade County means beaches and skyscrapers, but its actual land area is enormous once the Everglades portion gets counted. Measured fully, the county technically covers more land than the entire state of Rhode Island combined. Most residents cluster along the coast, completely unaware how much wilderness technically falls under the same jurisdiction. Alligators, bureaucrats, and beachgoers somehow share the exact same county government. Miami's skyline gives a tiny glimpse of a county whose true size stretches deep into swampland most tourists will genuinely never see or even know exists. 28. Miami's nickname Magic City sounds like it references glamorous nightlife or beach sunsets. But the real story is far more practical. Early visitors were stunned watching a small settlement explode into a full-fledged city within just a few short years. Buildings sprouted seemingly overnight, leaving newcomers convinced something magical must be happening. The nickname stuck, describing rapid growth rather than any actual sorcery. Modern Miami still grows at a dizzying pace, with new towers rising constantly. The city earned its magical reputation the old-fashioned way through sheer, relentless, unstoppable development speed. 29. Long before national debates over language policy, Miami-Dade quietly made history, passing the very first English-only law among major American counties back in 1980. Officials argued it would unify a rapidly diversifying population during a period of massive immigration. Critics immediately called it exclusionary, especially given the county's huge Spanish-speaking community. The law sparked heated debates lasting years before eventually being repealed. Miami-Dade became an early battleground for a language debate that would later spread nationwide. Few realize this contentious national conversation actually traces back to one South Florida county decision. 30. Corruption scandals are nothing new, but Miami's police department hit a particularly wild low point during the notorious Miami River Cops case. Instead of stopping drug smugglers, several on-duty officers were caught actively running cocaine themselves alongside criminals. Investigators uncovered officers robbing dealers and even causing deaths while wearing their badges the entire time. The scandal rocked public trust, forcing sweeping reforms across the department. Citizens struggled, processing that the people meant to protect them were secretly deep in the same criminal underworld. Miami's 80s drug chaos apparently reached all the way into its own patrol cars. 31. A lone lighthouse keeper on Key Biscayne found himself thrust into actual combat during the Second Seminole War back in 1836. Native warriors attacked the tower directly, forcing a desperate defense using whatever weapons were on hand at the time. His assistant was tragically killed protecting the structure, while the keeper himself barely survived the assault. Reinforcements eventually arrived, rescuing him from what seemed like certain death. That lighthouse still stands today as a quiet reminder of frontier violence most beachgoers walking past it now never think twice about. Miami's postcard views hide genuine battlefield history. 32. Little Havana didn't slowly develop over generations. It practically exploded into existence overnight, once Cuban exiles began fleeing Castro's regime, starting in 1959. Thousands arrived carrying little more than memories, building an entire cultural district from scratch within just a few short years. Cafecito windows, Domino's tables, and cigar shops appeared, rapidly transforming quiet streets into a vibrant Cuban stronghold. Longtime Miami residents watched their city's identity shift dramatically almost overnight. Little Havana remains one of America's clearest examples of an entire neighborhood being built essentially instantly by people who never planned on staying that long. 33. Sunscreen, as the world knows it today, actually traces back to a Miami pharmacist tinkering with formulas in his own lab. Benjamin Green tested early versions directly on Miami Beach sunbathers during the 1940s, watching which mixtures actually prevented painful burns. Some early attempts reportedly left users looking like they rolled in cocoa butter, yet the science kept improving. Eventually, his formula evolved into products still recognizable today. Beachgoers slathering on lotion. Worldwide have no idea their favorite summer essential began as backyard experiments conducted right on Miami's sand, decades before big brands ever existed. 34. Formula One racing seems like a European tradition, yet Miami somehow squeezed an entire Grand Prix directly into an NFL stadium parking lot. Engineers built a genuine racetrack complete with tight turns and marina-themed scenery around Hard Rock Stadium grounds. Fans who once tailgated for football games instead watched screaming race cars weaving past fake yacht displays. Purists initially mocked the concept, calling it artificial and gimmicky. Yet crowds packed in anyway, proving Miami could turn literally any parking lot into a world-class spectacle. Only this city could make Formula One feel like a stadium tailgate party. 35. Miami's oldest building isn't some forgotten pioneer cabin. It's actually a Spanish monastery built all the way back in 1141. Wealthy businessman William Randolph Hearst purchased the entire structure overseas, then had it dismantled, shipped across the ocean in pieces. Workers eventually reassembled it in Florida during the 1950s, creating a strange architectural time capsule. Visitors touring the grounds today are technically walking through medieval European stonework surrounded by palm trees and tropical humidity. Miami somehow imported centuries-old history piece by piece, proving the city will go to extreme lengths for authentic-looking landmarks. 36. Behind glamorous banking facades, Miami once hosted one of the most notorious financial scandals in modern history through BCCI. Investigators discovered the bank's Miami branch functioned as a major hub, laundering enormous sums of drug cartel money internationally. Executives moved funds through complex transactions designed specifically to dodge regulators watching closely elsewhere. Eventually, the scheme collapsed, triggering global investigations and criminal charges spanning multiple countries. Miami's skyline of shiny office towers briefly hid one of banking history's biggest criminal operations. Sometimes the most dangerous crimes wear suits instead of masks, and work regular banking hours downtown. 37. Little Haiti grew into one of the largest Haitian communities existing anywhere outside Haiti itself, right within Miami's city limits. Families fleeing political turmoil and economic hardship built entire commercial corridors filled with Creole restaurants, record shops, and community centers. Vibrant murals and rara music transformed ordinary streets into unmistakably Haitian territory practically overnight. Longtime residents fought hard, preserving cultural identity, even as development pressure crept steadily closer. Miami's map keeps expanding, yet Little Haiti stands firmly rooted, refusing erasure. This neighborhood proves immigrant communities can recreate an entire homeland's spirit thousands of miles from where it began. 38. The Orange Bowl wasn't originally about football glory at all. It started mainly as a desperate publicity stunt during the Great Depression. City officials needed anything to convince struggling Americans that sunny Florida deserved tourist dollars despite nationwide economic collapse. A college football game seemed like perfect bait, luring visitors toward warm weather and orange groves. The gamble worked spectacularly, turning into an annual tradition lasting generations. What began as a marketing trick eventually became one of college football's most respected bowl games. Miami basically invented sports tourism out of pure economic desperation. 39. Downtown Miami sits atop such solid limestone bedrock that almost no house across the entire city bothers building a basement. Construction crews quickly discovered digging deep proved nearly impossible without serious specialized equipment, given the dense rock underneath. Homeowners elsewhere brag about finished basements, while Miami residents simply shrug, having never considered one an option. This geological quirk shaped entire architectural styles throughout South Florida, differently from northern states. Storm shelters and storage rooms simply don't exist the same way here. Miami's ground itself basically vetoed an entire category of home design decades before anyone even tried arguing otherwise. 40. Stone crab lovers might feel guilty until learning Miami's harvesting method actually keeps the animal alive throughout the entire process. Fishermen carefully remove just one claw, then release the crab directly back into ocean waters completely unharmed. Remarkably, that claw eventually regenerates, allowing harvesting again from the same crab later on. Restaurants proudly advertise this sustainable practice as genuinely humane compared to typical seafood harvesting methods elsewhere. Diners cracking open buttery claws rarely realize they're eating from a creature swimming happily somewhere nearby right now. Miami somehow turned seafood harvesting into one of the ocean's rare, genuine happy endings. 41. A Miami mayoral election in 1997 turned into a genuine legal scandal after a judge discovered something deeply troubling in the results. Investigators found votes had actually been cast using the names of deceased residents pulled straight from old registration rolls. Absentee ballots became the center of an explosive fraud case nobody expected in modern American politics. The judge ultimately threw out the entire election, ordering a complete do-over from scratch. Miami residents watched in disbelief, realizing dead neighbors had technically participated in local democracy. Sometimes the wildest political scandals aren't hiding overseas, they're happening right in your own city hall. 42. Miami's Deering estate looks like a glamorous Gilded Age mansion perfect for wedding photos. Yet it secretly sits atop ancient human burial grounds thousands of years old. Archaeologists discovered remains belonging to indigenous people who lived there long before European settlers ever arrived. Construction crews had to carefully navigate preserving these sacred sites while maintaining the estate's historic architecture above ground. Visitors touring manicured gardens rarely realize they're walking directly above centuries of buried history. Miami's most elegant historic properties often hide surprisingly ancient secrets beneath their polished modern surfaces. Sometimes paradise is built directly on top of forgotten history. 43. Everyone assumes Scarface practically defines Miami's gritty identity, yet the film barely filmed there at all originally. City officials felt deeply offended watching an early script glorify drug violence associated with their community's real struggles. Permits got denied repeatedly, forcing production crews to relocate most filming elsewhere entirely, including California locations standing in for Miami streets. Ironically, the finished movie became forever linked with Miami's cultural identity, despite barely touching actual city soil. Tourists still visit landmarks assuming scenes were filmed there when most weren't. Miami rejected the movie that ended up defining its reputation worldwide anyway. 44. Long before professional basketball dominated South Florida sports culture, Jai-Alai betting parlors drew absolutely massive, enthusiastic crowds throughout Miami. Fans packed arenas nightly, cheering wildly for a fast-paced Basque sport most Americans elsewhere had never even heard about. Gambling money poured in, making certain matches feel like genuine major league events complete with dedicated fan rivalries. Attendance numbers reportedly rivaled early professional basketball games happening around the same era. Eventually, interest faded as other sports and gambling options expanded across Florida. Miami once treated Jai-Alai like a genuine major sport decades before basketball ever took over hearts locally. 45. Miami residents drink water sitting dangerously close to a city that floods regularly, which sounds terrifying once you understand the geology involved. The porous Biscayne Aquifer sits just feet below street level, supplying fresh water while simultaneously allowing seawater intrusion during storms and rising tides. Engineers constantly monitor contamination risks, preventing saltwater from creeping into the freshwater supply permanently. Residents rarely think about this delicate balance, turning on faucets each morning without hesitation. Miami's entire drinking water system depends on protecting a fragile underground layer, barely beneath sidewalks. People walk across daily without a second thought. 46. Construction crews preparing a routine downtown Miami condo project in 1998 instead uncovered something nobody expected hiding beneath ordinary city soil. Archaeologists identified an actual 2,000-year-old Tequesta stone circle representing one of the oldest confirmed indigenous structures ever found in an American city center. Developers faced intense pressure, forcing them to completely redesign their entire building plans around preserving this ancient discovery. Historians called it an incredibly rare find, given how urban development typically destroys such evidence completely. Miami's shiny modern skyline now literally circles around physical proof that people lived there thousands of years before skyscrapers existed. 47. A quiet psychiatric hospital on Key Biscayne secretly treated shell-shocked World War II veterans decades before doctors officially recognized PTSD as a legitimate diagnosis. Soldiers returning home struggling with invisible trauma often had nowhere else understanding enough to help them heal properly. Staff experimented cautiously with early treatment methods lacking modern psychological terminology or research completely. Families rarely discussed why loved ones disappeared there, temporarily given the era's heavy stigma surrounding mental illness. Miami quietly became an early testing ground for treating trauma nobody yet had proper language to describe. Sometimes forgotten history hides inside the quietest-looking buildings imaginable. 48. Greyhound racing operated continuously throughout Miami-Dade for nearly an entire century before finally facing an official ban arriving surprisingly late in 2020. Animal rights advocates spent decades documenting injuries and poor conditions affecting racing dogs across various tracks statewide. Crowds once gathered enthusiastically betting on races, treating it as completely normal weekend entertainment for generations straight. Public opinion gradually shifted as awareness spread regarding how these animals were actually treated behind the scenes. Miami finally closed a controversial chapter of its entertainment history far later than most people probably assumed. Change sometimes arrives generations after problems first become obvious. 49. Miami Beach's postcard perfect sand isn't actually native to the area the way most visitors naturally assume while relaxing beachside. Much of it was trucked in or dredged directly from other locations, entirely replenishing eroded shorelines through massive engineering projects. Storms and rising tides constantly wash sand away, forcing officials into expensive, repeated replenishment cycles, just maintaining that famous look. Tourists posing for beach photos rarely realize they're standing on imported material rather than anything naturally occurring locally. Miami essentially manufactures its own paradise repeatedly, just to keep tourists satisfied. Even nature here apparently needed some serious outside assistance. 50. Professional soccer struggled finding footing in Miami for decades, despite the city's deep, passionate connection to the sport through immigrant communities citywide. Multiple earlier attempts at professional teams folded quietly without ever building lasting momentum locally. Everything changed once retired superstar David Beckham became personally determined, bringing an MLS franchise directly to Miami, starting around 2020. His star power and business connections finally pushed through obstacles previous investors couldn't overcome themselves. Fans who grew up loving soccer elsewhere finally got their own hometown team worth celebrating. Miami's soccer scene needed one famous name to finally make it stick permanently. 51. Most cities gradually evolve through decades of small incremental growth, yet Miami somehow skipped that entire process, jumping straight from tiny village to legitimate city almost overnight. Early settlers watched dirt roads and scattered buildings transform rapidly into an actual functioning urban center within just a handful of years. Investors and railroad money accelerated development at a pace few other American cities have ever matched historically. Longtime residents barely had time adjusting before their sleepy settlement became something entirely different. Miami essentially cheated the normal timeline every city usually follows growing up. Some places evolve slowly, Miami simply sprinted. 52. In 1980, a single dramatic event permanently reshaped Miami's population within just a matter of months completely. The Mariel boat lift brought roughly 125,000 Cuban refugees crossing dangerous waters seeking freedom and opportunity in South Florida. Boats overloaded with desperate families arrived, constantly overwhelming local resources and completely transforming neighborhoods almost instantly. Existing Cuban communities scrambled, helping newcomers adjust, while local officials struggled managing such an enormous, unexpected surge. Miami's cultural identity shifted permanently, practically overnight, because of this single historic wave. Few immigration events anywhere reshaped an American city this dramatically, this quickly. 53. The Miami Marine Stadium once buzzed with energy, hosting thrilling powerboat races and legendary concerts throughout its decades-long run on Virginia Key. Crowds packed the unique modernist structure, watching boats roar across the water while iconic musicians performed unforgettable shows nearby. Everything changed suddenly after Hurricane Andrew caused significant damage, forcing officials closing the stadium entirely back in 1992. Instead of repairing it, authorities simply abandoned the site, letting nature slowly reclaim the structure over following decades. Urban explorers and photographers now sneak in, capturing eerie beauty frozen in time. Miami's greatest concert venue basically became a forgotten ghost. 54. Miami's Freedom Tower earned a powerful nickname, processing so many refugees fleeing hardship that people started calling it the Ellis Island of the South, entirely fittingly. Cuban exiles arriving throughout the 1960s received essential paperwork, medical care, and assistance navigating life in a completely new country. Thousands passed through its doors carrying little more than hope and determination, building entirely new lives from scratch afterward. The building witnessed countless emotional reunions alongside heartbreaking goodbyes, representing massive life transitions daily. Today, it stands preserved, honoring that critical immigration history permanently. Miami's skyline holds one building representing pure human resilience completely. 55. Miami's entire existence technically depended on massive engineering efforts, draining huge stretches of the Everglades, starting way back in the early 1900s completely. Developers viewed the swampy wetlands as worthless obstacles, blocking valuable buildable land desperately needed for rapid urban expansion happening everywhere. Canals and pumps redirected natural water flow permanently, altering delicate ecosystems that had existed peacefully for thousands of years beforehand. Modern experts now consider this decision one of America's biggest environmental engineering blunders in national history overall. Miami essentially built its entire foundation atop an ecological mistake nobody fully understood consequences of yet. 56. Florida's so-called Romeo and Juliet law sounds charmingly romantic, yet its actual legal function surprises almost everyone learning details for the first time completely. Rather than excusing relationships between minors up front, it only allows petitioning removal from Florida's sex offender registry under specific narrow circumstances afterward. Many assume incorrectly that the cute nickname means automatic legal protection, preventing serious consequences entirely, which simply isn't accurate legally. Lawyers frequently correct misunderstandings, explaining the law's actual narrow limited scope compared to its friendly-sounding name. Miami area cases repeatedly highlight this confusing gap between romantic-sounding legislation and its much harsher legal reality. 57. Wynwood. Today overflows with colorful murals and trendy galleries. Yet decades ago, it was simply a rundown collection of forgotten warehouses, attracting almost zero visitors whatsoever. Developer Tony Goldman had a genuinely unusual idea, specifically inviting graffiti artists legally painting massive murals directly onto abandoned building walls throughout the district. Artists worldwide eventually flocked there, transforming dull concrete into a globally recognized outdoor art destination within just a few short years. Tourists now travel specifically seeking Instagram-worthy photos, completely unaware how recently the neighborhood was practically ignored entirely. Miami turned literal urban decay into premium real estate through pure creative vision. 58. In 2000, a single custody battle over a young Cuban boy transformed Miami into the center of a genuinely tense international standoff practically overnight. Elian Gonzalez survived a dangerous voyage that tragically killed his mother, sparking fierce debate between relatives in Miami and his father remaining back in Cuba. Protesters filled streets nightly, while federal agents eventually removed the child during a dramatic pre-dawn raid, capturing national attention completely. Cuban exile communities felt deeply betrayed, watching political tensions overshadow one family's private tragedy publicly. Miami briefly became ground zero for a story blending immigration politics, grief, and international diplomacy simultaneously. 59. Since 1986, Miami-Dade has operated Metromover, a completely free automated train system, quietly becoming one of the only fully driverless public transit networks anywhere in America. Passengers glide silently through downtown without any conductor or driver controlling movement whatsoever, relying entirely on automated technology functioning smoothly overhead. Tourists often ride purely out of curiosity, treating it more like an amusement park attraction than actual practical transportation. Locals, meanwhile, use it daily, barely noticing the genuinely impressive engineering happening beneath their daily commute routine. Miami quietly built futuristic transportation decades before most cities even considered attempting anything similar. 60. Coral Gables. Biltmore Hotel today feels effortlessly glamorous, yet it actually spent decades serving a completely different purpose, functioning as a military and VA hospital instead. Wounded soldiers received treatment, recovering within the same grand hallways where wealthy guests now casually sip cocktails. Poolside without a second thought. The building's elegant architecture, originally designed purely for luxury tourism, instead witnessed genuine wartime recovery and healing for years straight. Eventually, renovations restored its original hospitality purpose, returning it fully back into a celebrated hotel once again completely. Miami's most elegant hotel secretly carries genuine wartime medical history hidden beneath its polished, glamorous surface. 61. Miami's cultural identity often gets credited almost entirely to its famous Cuban population, yet Little Haiti shaped the city just as powerfully in its own right. Haitian immigrants built entire commercial corridors filled with distinct music, art, and cuisine, reflecting their homeland's traditions proudly throughout decades. Community leaders fought hard, establishing recognition and resources often overlooked compared to attention given elsewhere across the city. Cultural festivals celebrating Haitian heritage now draw crowds rivaling other much more famous neighborhood events happening regularly. Miami's true cultural story includes far more diversity than most outsiders typically realize or acknowledge. Little Haiti deserves equal recognition. 62. Beneath Miami International Airport sits a genuinely bizarre forgotten relic. Almost nobody outside transportation history circles ever hears about it all. An abandoned 1970s train station remains buried there, originally built anticipating a high-speed rail line, connecting Miami directly to Orlando eventually. Funding collapsed before construction ever finished, leaving the underground station completely useless and forgotten beneath active runways above. Engineers occasionally reference it, discussing failed infrastructure projects representing wasted taxpayer money spent decades earlier without result. Passengers rushing through modern terminals have absolutely no idea forgotten tunnels sit silently beneath their hurried footsteps. Miami buried an entire failed transportation dream underground permanently. 63. Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law faced some of its most nationally scrutinized legal tests, specifically within cases originating around the greater Miami area completely. Legal experts nationwide debated whether the law protected legitimate self-defense or instead enabled unnecessary violence given ambiguous circumstances surrounding several controversial incidents. Media coverage turned local courtroom proceedings into major national conversations about race justice and gun policy simultaneously. Protesters and legal scholars alike closely followed these cases, shaping broader nationwide legislative debates for years afterward. Miami unexpectedly became a central stage testing one of America's most divisive self-defense laws directly. Few realized that beforehand. 64. Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden in Coral Gables wasn't created purely for pretty photographs. It actually began during the 1930s, specifically rescuing rare tropical plants facing extinction worldwide. Founders traveled distant countries collecting endangered specimens, bringing them back, specifically preserving genetic diversity that might otherwise disappear permanently through deforestation or habitat loss. Scientists still use the garden today, conducting genuine conservation research, protecting species most casual visitors walking through completely overlook entirely. Tourists snapping photos beside exotic flowers rarely realize they're standing inside an active scientific preservation effort decades in the making. Miami's prettiest garden secretly doubles as genuine botanical rescue mission. 65. Flamingos once practically defined Florida's identity visually, yet hunters nearly wiped the entire population out, completely chasing profitable feather trading throughout earlier centuries entirely. Fashion trends demanding elaborate feathered hats drove demand so high populations collapsed dramatically across the state within just a few devastating decades. Conservation efforts eventually helped protect remaining birds, though wild flamingos disappeared from regular sightings for generations afterward completely. Recently, sightings have slowly increased again as birds naturally migrate back, reclaiming territory their ancestors once dominated freely. Miami's most iconic pink bird nearly vanished entirely before quietly staging its own unexpected comeback recently. 66. Vizcaya looks like it belongs in centuries-old European history, yet this grand Miami mansion was actually brand new construction, completed back in 1916 entirely. Industrialist James Deering deliberately designed everything appearing aged and historic, despite being freshly built, specifically creating an illusion of old-world aristocratic grandeur immediately upon completion. Craftsmen artificially weathered stone and imported antique furnishings, specifically enhancing this carefully constructed illusion, completely convincing visitors otherwise. Tourists today still assume they're touring genuine centuries-old European architecture, completely unaware regarding its actual recent origins entirely. Miami basically faked historic grandeur so convincingly, nobody questioned it for generations afterward. 67. Miami regularly experiences flooding on completely sunny, cloudless days, confusing visitors who assume flooding requires actual rainfall happening somewhere nearby beforehand. King tides push seawater upward directly through Miami's naturally porous limestone ground, bypassing traditional drainage systems entirely regardless of weather conditions above. Streets suddenly fill with saltwater, despite clear blue skies, leaving confused tourists wondering what pipe possibly burst somewhere nearby unexpectedly. Residents have grown accustomed treating these bizarre sunny day floods as completely normal seasonal occurrences requiring specific street closures annually. Miami's geography creates flooding that defies basic logical expectations most people naturally assume regarding typical weather patterns everywhere else. 68. Miami's beloved causeways connecting downtown directly toward beautiful beaches didn't start as free public infrastructure the way most residents assume while driving across daily today. Private companies originally built and operated these bridges, specifically charging tolls, profiting directly from beach traffic before city officials eventually purchased them outright later. Early drivers grumbled, paying fees, simply reaching sandy shores that residents nowadays consider completely free public access entirely. Eventually, public ownership replaced private profit motives, finally opening beach access without additional charges required. Miami's beach commute history secretly began as a private profitable business venture few tourists ever consider today. 69. The 1935 Labor Day hurricane remains one of the deadliest storms in American history, killing hundreds of World War I veterans building the overseas highway throughout the Florida Keys tragically. These veterans, already struggling economically during the Great Depression, took dangerous government construction jobs, desperately needing steady income supporting their families back home. Warnings arrived too late, leaving workers completely stranded directly in the storm's catastrophic path, with nowhere safe escaping quickly enough beforehand. Survivors described scenes of absolute devastation, losing friends and co-workers within mere hours during the tragedy. Miami's stretch of Paradise Highway carries a tragic buried history. Few travelers consider driving through today. 70. Brickell today represents Miami's dense, glittering financial skyline, yet remarkably this same land once grew nothing but peaceful avocado and mango groves, owned by early pioneer families generations earlier completely. Farmers cultivated fruit trees across quiet rural acreage decades before skyscrapers replaced orchards, entirely transforming the landscape beyond recognition within just a few generations. Longtime Miami families still recall stories passed down, describing simple agricultural life existing exactly where major banks now conduct billion-dollar transactions daily. Development pressure eventually made farming economically impossible, pushing families selling land toward lucrative urban expansion instead. Miami's financial district secretly grew from fruit trees rather than concrete. 71. Biscayne National Park technically counts as a national park, yet nearly 95% of its entire protected area sits completely underwater rather than accessible dry land whatsoever. Visitors expecting typical hiking trails instead need boat snorkeling gear or diving equipment, simply exploring most of the park's actual protected ecosystem properly. Coral reefs, shipwrecks, and marine life dominate the landscape rather than typical forests or mountains. Most people associate with national parks generally. Rangers frequently explain to confused first-time visitors why hiking boots won't help much touring this particular park's unique underwater-dominated terrain. Miami quietly protects one of America's least visited, most unusual national parks entirely. Miami keeps proving that the wildest stories in America aren't hiding overseas, they're hiding in plain sight right here in Florida. If any of these 71 facts blew your mind, smash that like button and subscribe to Dumbest Things, because we cover a new dumbest city every single week. Now here's my question for you. Which one of these Miami facts genuinely shocked you the most? Drop your answer in the comments below and let's see which fact wins. See you in the next one.